Gentlemen, we got to get right into the FTC losing. This makes me smile from ear to ear. This is a story that broke earlier this afternoon. And well, finally, after nearly 2 years of owning Activision Blizzard and King, it is official. The FTC has lost their bid and or appeal to break up Activision Blizzard King from Microsoft. Again, this is really, Hargeet, this is not surprising. I don't understand why it took this long. I am still a bit perplexed that the entire planet Earth was like approving this. And yeah, granted, in some regions of the world, they had to kind of, walk on eggshells, like specifically with the UK and the EU and stuff like that. And they had to do some deals, which didn't really need to get done, but they got done. And as great as it is to see the now no longer run FTC by Lena Khan, it's somebody else. The FTC has lost. And that's it. They can't come back to this. But see, that legal mumbo jumbo is boring. And that's not what we're going to talk about here, because now we're going to get into, is acquisition season back on the table? Now, Hargeet, you had some thoughts, you had some theories about what they could do, what we could expect, maybe even an investment that's not gaming. But here's the thing. A publisher of the size of, like a Take-Two, and that's where I'm kind of going to rest my hat on. I say that if you're going to go for something big, it's got to be something humongous, and Take-Two would be the play. And I say that because, again, Grand Theft Auto, whatever, is never going to be, exclusive. The same way Call of Duty is never going to be exclusive. But you see, the play, at least in my mind, is that game is, at least in my opinion, as big and potentially bigger than Call of Duty. If that was somehow an Xbox Game Pass, I got to be honest with you. I don't care where you game or what's your favorite brand or what's your favorite platform. You would find a way to subscribe to this service. It's that powerful of an IP. And I would even dare say that would be the same thing for like, say, for instance, Red Dead Redemption 3 released. That would be one of those driving forces as to why you would subscribe. Now, granted, I say this, Hargeet, full-throated, pause, that if you're not already subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for, because they have had year after year of bangers, and 2025 has been crazy good. But let's talk acquisition season. Do you think that being the shackles have been removed from Microsoft, who we know has $90 billion in cash ready to invest, do they go something big this year, or do they wait?
So, well, first I'll say that, the FTC failed miserably in doing what they should have done, which, if you notice, the EU and, as you mentioned, both the CMA and the EU, they got concessions. You know why? They got to the table and said, what can we get from you? Right? And the FTC said, we're suing you, instead of saying, what can we get from you? Look at all these price hikes. They could have said, hey, you're locked. You can't price hike for 5 years. Would that have been a really good benefit? Right? And like, the FTC just totally failed miserably, just in their zeal to go after companies instead of saying, what can I get to make this better for the consumer? Putting that aside, now that this is over, right? The acquisitions, I first put out that Microsoft has its own ambitions outside of just gaming. And so just keep in mind that the next thing could be totally outside of gaming, right? It is Microsoft, not just Xbox. And since Microsoft was tied up in this, now they're not. They might go after something that they might have in strategic view. Think AI, right? That's a big play for them. It could be anything else we don't know, right? And that is, also stuff that's on the table. And so they have to think of Microsoft, not just gaming. Gaming's going great. That's awesome. And they could just say, hold, right? Keep doing what you're doing, or buy smaller stuff. That's fine. That's in your purview, Phil. Go ahead. Right? But if you want some big capital, we're looking at some other stuff. And that's fair, because it's Microsoft, right? And so they have to look at that. So I would say the next thing may not be in gaming. Maybe it is, but it may not be in gaming, right? Because there are big strategic areas that they're focusing on those other areas may need some capital, right? And they may go that direction. That'd be the first thing. If you're going to go into gaming, the three that I've been looking at that I think are interesting, Valve foremost. And why? First, you get Steam. Obvious, you get that store. Second is the biggest games being played on Steam are Valve games. They're CSGO 2 and Dota. They're consistently at the top, right? And you're like, okay, so if you want like the top tier games, which is what they want those black hole games. These are games that are just played by literally millions on a consistent basis, right? You look at the concurrent player base of those games, it's like millions. So that's what you want. You want that, right? So that's a massive boon for them. The direction of growth for them, that vehicle is on Windows, mobile to some level, and that's a whole other story. That's an interesting story, but it's definitely in the Windows space, right? And if that's the case, you want to have the store du jour, which is Steam. You want to have that locked up. So Valve would be one of the best potential options. Don't know where they are on the relationship, whether it's viable or not. That's all, whatever. Usually enough zeros, that viability becomes, yes, sure, I'll take that money. So that's really a question for them to figure out, asset value versus enticement and how they get to a deal. If it's viable, it's all private company, right? It's all held by Gabe, I think. So, if that's an option, that's definitely one to get. Second would be Take-Two. It gets you Zynga. It gets you Take-Two, the entire NBA 2K, WWE 2K, those annual releases. Again, those big games that everybody seems to get into, and they would now be directly in Game Pass. Gives you far more value to the subscription customer. Hey, I'm getting these annual releases. They just come in. Boom, right? So that's a big boon there. Obviously, there's other major IPs like GTA. There's Mafia and Borderlands and blah, blah, blah. All the other things that they have. That's great. That's awesome. They get Zynga. They get all that. And they get those annual releases, which is big, right? So they increase their mobile presence. They increase the annual releases. That's great. The other big one I was looking at is Sega. Sega owns Rovio, so you get another mobile. And then you also get the major publisher with a lot of different IP. And you get some of those stellar, at this point, I would say they're probably outdoing, Square Enix in the RPG category with their personas, right? So you look at those kind of, Metaphor just came out last year. Once you get that kind of catalog, that's now in Game Pass. You get the entire Yakuza series, and they're revitalizing all their old IPs. Sonic becomes one of their mascots, right? So it's a pretty big, awesome option. Plus, it's an Asian, publisher. So those are the three that I've been looking at. But again, I think there's still Microsoft's going to go and say, I need Microsoft stuff first. So there's other Microsoft areas they're going to go after. That'd be my guess, because I'm sure they've been waiting to go after other things in different areas. And then they might come back to this. But smaller stuff is viable. Anything under that 100 million threshold, they could just go do it, right? It's non-regulatory. It's not going to look for regulatory oversight because it's under the normal amount, right? So I think if they look at smaller things, they can go pick it up. I was thinking, is it Asobo that makes the
Asobo is one.
Sims?
IO Interactive
right?
is another.
IO Interactive is very expensive, mind you.
Really?
IO Interactive is pretty. Yeah, it's not cheap. I want to say last I looked it was like 500-600, something like that. It's up there. It's not cheap. So, and if you look at the deal, they even if you look at the steal they got for IDOS and Crystal Dynamics, they're currently part of a bigger mix called the Middle Earth and Friends or something like that.
Yeah, Middle Earth and Friends. That's the way they broke it up. Yeah,
something like that. And that was still, they bought that for, I want to say it was like 300. And then they've added all that stuff to it, so that might be in the billion range. So it would be in the regulatory reach as far as they would have to look at it, right? So I don't know if they would go touch that. There's this whole thing about they've been talking to WB. Here's the problem with WB, right? You either buy all of WB, right? Which, okay, fine. Does Microsoft want to get back into the video business? I don't know that they do, or it's up to them, right? But that's a massive headache. They went through it before and they hated it, and then they got rid of it. So I don't know if they're going to want to do that again.
WB is a mess, bro. Their leadership is awful.
And whatever their status is, it's you would have to own the IP, which means you basically have to buy the whole thing. And then that means you basically are stuck with the video business, which may not be a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? But that would be hey, does Microsoft want to do that again? Their competitors are, by the way. Apple is doing video content. Amazon's doing video content. I don't know to what level you can say Google is doing their own, but they own bloody YouTube, okay, which is a massive freaking video platform. So you could say that hey, maybe that is something they should look at, right? They tried to do it with Mixer and failed miserably there, but maybe if they and they bought, I think it was NBC and they made MSNBC and whatever, that whole thing. That's how you got the MSNBC network. That's the news channel. This is a potential for them, but I don't know if they want to go through that or not, because they did it before. They hated it. If they want to go down that path and compete in that world, they would get a ton of IP. They would also get the studios that do make games as well, right? So it's a viable thing, but gosh, it's a lot of headaches. And it's much easier to go, you just stay in your lane type of thing, right? To just stay in that lane that they're in and keep doing what they're doing. I wouldn't put it past them, though. It's possible, right? If this is an ambition they have, fair enough, right? And if they truly want to compete like their main competitors do, then they probably should look at that, because their competitors are all doing it, right? So that's up to them. So that's a far-fetched idea. I think the three that I mentioned are much more likely, but I think the smaller studios, especially the ones that are under the 100 million range, there's a lot of little ones they could do. That. What was the one that made Oxide? Was it the one that made that the
Oxide Games?
4X?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So they could pick that. That can't be very expensive, right? And so like if they want to continue that journey, they could do that. Those are the kind of things I would look for, like smaller little things that could just get out of the way. But as far as bigger things, I think it's going to go a different direction first. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to go a different direction first, because I think they have pending other things that they're strategic value to Microsoft that they're going to go after. So that'd be my guess. And then it might be one of these. But if I had to pick one first, it would be Valve. That was like the obvious one to me. Make that the store du jour of your stuff, so that you own the platform that is yours anyway, right? And everybody who wants to get into Game Pass would not be so disinclined to use it, because the Steam store is the store that everybody seems to like when it comes to content on Windows, on PC. So that'd be my thoughts.
I mean, it's great picks all around. You know the one that's the most intriguing but exciting. Look, a lot of us old graybeards, and I shave, so I don't really have a gray beard tonight, which is fine. I hate the beard anyway, but we all look back to Sega. I mean, I know that there's going to be some Nintendo folks that like Mario better than Sonic, and I get all of that. But I'm a Sega kid. As much as I love Nintendo, I'm a Sega kid. I remember bringing home Tony La Russa baseball with the Genesis. Oh my God. I went with my mom to pick that up. It was such good times, man. And right now, Sega is on a tear. Like, they are doing some big things. And why I really like that, look, everybody would say buy GTA, of course, or, something else. Fine. Why, and I can't speak for him because he's in the midst of a meeting. I tried to get him here. He's super busy. I'm talking about Everborn Saga. He would fall out of his chair for a Sega acquisition. But why I like the Sega pick is because of how the relationship with Sega and Xbox has been, right? The Yakuza series has taken off in a big way. There's some rumors floating around. Now, I don't know how viable this is, because I don't have I can't source it, which is why I say take it with a grain of salt. But there's been some rumors floating around that they want to take the development of Yakuza and transition that know-how into a new Shenmue, which would be, because I think they need to reboot the series. They just really need to, and that engine would be perfect for it. But it's not just something as small as that. I'm not being facetious. Shenmue, not a lot of people know about that. That game was dope. That is really a trilogy of, if you haven't played it, man, you missed out. But they're just about to re-release all of their classic IPs redone. You're getting a new Shinobi. You're getting a new Golden Axe. You're getting a new Streets of Rage. I mean, it's just, the Jet Set Radio is coming back. Echo the Dolphin, for crying out loud, is coming back. It's just madness. So if you're a Sega dude like me, you would definitely appreciate that. But Kay Asante, look, we have a lot of people. Some people are for more acquisitions. Others are like, they need to stop. They stay where they are, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is this: Xbox Anywhere is ultimately the play. And Xbox Anywhere is going to be partnered with Xbox Game Pass. And they need to continue to fill the coffers of Xbox Game Pass with first-party IP, indies, second-party, and third-party deals. But if they own someone like a Sega, and that goes into Game Pass, or like, for instance, I know this is crazy, folks, they owned Grand Theft Auto, and somehow or another, that was an entry. You would see, I mean, I don't know what it would be in a week, a month, a year, but you would see record growth to having some big IPs in there. Do you think they wait? And do you believe that maybe they go for some of the smaller studios that they're currently working with? Where do you take this, man?
So honestly, for me, what I have seen from them, they tend to overcorrect when things happen. When something happens and they beat it by the skin of their teeth, or maybe they lose a little bit, they go, okay, we're gonna fix it, and then they fix it to a point where it becomes sometimes a little detrimental. I would look at like
they break it instead of
Cyberpunk.
fixing it.
That's right. I would look at Cyberpunk and their what do you call it, their certification system process as an effect, right? Cyberpunk showed that you needed a more robust certification system across the board, and what did that do? That's led to Xbox having some delayed games because the certification process is robust, right? They take lessons and they learn it, right? So to me, I feel like is there any company that could potentially buy the likes of a Take-Two or Valve? Absolutely, right? And there are very few who could. Microsoft is definitely one of them, right? I'm just not sure they would want to in the short term, because they got the sun burned their butt on the last one, right? A little bit for a while, right? Like it really did. Like they went in expecting, we're gonna do a couple of years, we'll be fine, and they were roasted, right? Although, to Hargeet's point, they were roasted. Indeed, they were, but ultimately they got off scot-free, like scot-free. Why? Because let's take a pause and think about it. Since they've done this, they have increased prices on both their software and their hardware, right? They're basically disenfranchising their hardcore at this point, right? All things that a smart and capable FTC could have protected against while coming for them, right? While looking to adjudicate the case. Instead, it was ABK, shiny, Call of Duty, shiny, and it kept every attention there to all these things that, to Hargeet's point, maybe protect the consumer, stop price increases, put some teeth in the ruling to make to be able to say you got some concessions. But of course, that's not what happened here. It is what it is. For me right now, I think if they are smart, and I know they are, the bunch of great people that work there, they know what they're talking about. I would say right now, mum's the word on any of those huge regulatory FTC fights. Will they make it through? Of course they will, right? We see that the regimes have changed, and big business will rule the day as it tends to, right? So could they make big purchases? I'm sure they could, but I don't think they do without it being fanfare again, without it being this whole big, who wants their pound of flesh again, right? And to the point that you guys have already made, it is absolutely like possible for them to make these purchases of certain strategic value that they want without it hitting Front Street, without it becoming a huge burden that people have to make a big deal about. So to your point, right? I do think that the big X factor is, do they want to be purchased? Right? This is not like we want you, we have you territory. That tends to be, that's not how the world works these days, right? There has to be two willing parties, and the world we live right now, corporate in even speaking in gaming, corporate's not getting a good look. So I would imagine indie devs aren't so eager to be bought by corporate, but that is the smart play, right? I do agree with you guys that is the smart play, where you strategically purchase a few studios here and there. You want to make another publishing house? Don't buy a publishing house. Make one from disparate studios that you then bring together as a brain trust.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of this requires vision. It requires attention. It requires patience. And of course, we are now armed with the things we know now that we didn't know before ABK, which means don't expect any real gaming benefits. Potentially expect layoffs to happen there. Like there's a lot of that mushy middle that we weren't anticipating, like keeping in our mind's eye when that whole ABK fight started, and now we're very much well aware of what that means, right? What the acquisitions and things mean. But honestly, to everyone's point, I do agree that they should still be on the hunt for acquisitions. I think they should, but they should be a lot more strategic now and be very, very poignant and pick studios where they can assist and they can help. And then, like much like in the compulsion example, empower and then sit back and watch what they can do. And more often than not, it seems to be benefiting them. So yeah, I agree with the Sega point, but the thing with Sega is, while they are riding high, do they want to take their own the foot off the gas themselves and hand it to Microsoft? Because that's effectively what they'd be doing, right? They have a vision now and they have a plan now. Do they think that Microsoft can help them meet that vision, or are they bold enough to go, look, man, we got it. We think we're good. Not sure, right? Because we all can agree Sega's on a tear. They're doing something. They got interesting things afoot, and it looks like it's all going to be exciting. Do they think they need them in order to get to the finishing line? Because that'd probably be the only reason how and why they would that would facilitate. It wouldn't be we want you, here's money. It'd be we got a plan, leave us alone.
It's an interesting thought and theory from both sides of the perspective. So walk with me, folks, on this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? From an Xbox point of view, you say, well, look, Sonic is hot. And I don't mean that figuratively. He's making money for them, right? Sonic 1, 2, and 3 were a surprise at the box office ever since they fixed that ugly Sonic that everyone was like, "Oh my God, no, please!" And the torches and the pitchforks came out, and he's making money for them. Sonic may not be as big for some as Mario is for others, right? And that's fine. And you know what? I don't care where you go. I think they're both incredible mascots that have an unbelievable legacy. But to own that particular character and all of the characters that come along with Sonic, it would be a big deal. But from the Sega point of view, look, Sega is, you know what's interesting? And this is a bit of a side tangent. I don't know if you guys and gals remember, before Resident Evil 7 came out, Capcom was on the cusp of filing for Chapter 11. I'm not sure if a lot of people actually remember that. They were in big trouble. And from Resident Evil 7 to where they are now, they have exploded on the scene, and they are one of the most dominant publishers in gaming right now. Sega kind of looks like they're on that trajectory a little bit, right? Like they were down and out for many, many years, and they slowly been putting out games, and obviously they've been hitting. I mean, there's been a lot of really big Sega games to come out, and maybe they are not in the position that they want to be purchased, but because the market is so volatile right now, who knows? So, look, they have a good working relationship. I think there is value having Sonic as an IP. I think, honestly, there's value in all of their old IP coming back in a big way. I think that all of those games that I just mentioned earlier, like the Shinobis and the Streets of Rage and Echo the Dolphin, I don't know how they stand on their own, because I know that I'm buying every one of them. But would it behoove Sega to put those games into a service like Xbox Game Pass where they get a bag of money? And if they were purchased, well, then they would be in Game Pass automatically. So it's an interesting thought and theory. Again, I like the idea of the smaller ones. I don't think they go for any big publishers. And Hargate actually might be onto something here, where he thinks Xbox might actually, well, Microsoft might actually want to Microsoft, if you know what I mean. And that's get into, further into AI development and by companies in the
or any of the other
tech
vision things
space.
that they have, right? This cloud stuff. We just don't know. There might be other areas that they need more investment, right? So that they can, they have many areas to compete in. That's just the reality of it. A smaller company that might be, I don't know how big it is, but Samfall that just did Expedition 33, which seems to have blown up. That can't be too big of an investment. I'm sure that's not going to be over 100, right? So, but hey, that would fund their next game. It seems to have done very well in Game Pass. It's still is it 2 million now? How many? It's sold quite a bit.
Yeah, they
it?
just announced that they
Mhm.
had crossed
Yeah.
2 million sales. Yes.
Yeah. So that's another potential. I would have liked this to have happened already, but it didn't. It was a GSC Game World. I think that's the name, the one that did Stalker.
Yes.
After all the crap that they've been through, and they've already invested so much, would that be a potential for them? But I don't know if that goes over the 100 level. It probably does.
They're kind of small though. I don't know if anybody in the chat, we have a lot of sleuths here. If you could find out what the market cap for GSC Game World is,
I don't know if they're public,
into the chat.
but public, it makes it a little easier because it's readily available what their market capitalization is, but also you could just go in and say, well, I want this for this much, so I will just pay your shareholders this much. Now what? Though to Kay's point, it's not just one. Like, you want it to be mutual because the developers are who you're buying. It's not really it's not just the IP. It's the people who make the IP that matter a lot. So you want to make sure that they're there with it. But